Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Klein, co-founder and CEO, along with my husband and company visionary, Devin Klein.
And together, with our amazing team, we are going to help you push past your limits, not just physically in our gyms, but right here, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the Burn Bootcamp podcast.
Together, we will take on challenges and break through barriers to transform into the best possible version of ourselves. We are more than a gym. We are a community. Your community. Let's go, Burn Nation.
All right, Dr. Tracy Gapin, welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast today. We are so excited to have you here. And, obviously, I could pick your brain for like 10 hours on all of your education, your background, your experience. But we don't have that much time. So let's kind of start at the top and then work our way down. I really want to talk today about, me personally, and this isn't a selfish thing, but this is because you're an expert in men's health and testosterone, and I'm 37 and I'm getting, ready to be in my 40s in the next few years. And I know, allegedly things start changing around your 40-year-old birthday. And so let's start here because as I research you and go through all your material, one thing that sticks out to me that I think you and I have in common, so we're starting on common ground here, is that, we both have this sense that the healthcare system is broken, that we can do more, that it's very reactive, that there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of regulation, there's a lot of just kind of ass backwards ideology when it comes to how we're spending the most money, and also being one of the sickest countries out there as of today. And we all want that to change. So what's your take on that? Just, and if you'd like to say any additional words on about yourself or your experience, please do so. But let's jump in.
Yeah, sure. So you're spot on that we are failing. Our healthcare system in the U.S. is failing, and I know because I was in it. For 25 years, I was a urologist running a busy practice in the insurance world, and my eyes really opened when I struggled with my own health issues and going down one rabbit hole after another. I found all the problems that we're dealing with. And, you bring up the fact that you're 36 years old, 36, 37, and going on 40. But I tell you, I'm seeing men in their 20s and 30s who have dramatically diminished testosterone levels. And the studies show that our testosterone levels worldwide are half what they were 20 years ago. So there are 3 huge studies, longitudinal studies, in the U.S., Sweden, and Finland. All 3 studies looked at testosterone levels, among other labs, for over 20 years in men. And what they found was a nearly 50% decline in free testosterone levels across the board. And we're starting to see that now in men struggling with things like brain fog, directly tied to hormones and testosterone, weight gain, low energy, trouble sleeping, can't build muscle, can't burn fat. This has nothing to do with sex or bodybuilding or all the typical things that a lot of people will attribute to testosterone. We're talking about actual functionality. And in fact, studies show that cardiovascular disease is directly tied to this as well. So dozens of studies show that men with low testosterone have a dramatically increased risk of developing cardiovascular disease and having a major adverse cardiac event, heart attack, stroke, death. And in fact, studies show that men with lower testosterone levels have earlier mortality than men with higher levels. So it's a big deal that for some reason just not getting the attention that I think it really deserves.
So why do you think that it's such a dramatic change? You said it's basically half of what it once was. What are the underlying factors?
Sure, and there are a number of factors. Crummy food supply, poor diet. Seed oils, pro-inflammatory. A lot. Sugar in our diet has dramatically increased as well. I would say stress levels have certainly increased. We've become more sedentary, so we're not nearly as active as we were in the past. But without question, in my opinion, and the studies show this, it's toxins in our environment that are crushing our testosterone levels.
Is that mostly food? Is that mostly food? Is that, when you mean the environment, is that our food?
Yeah,
is that our
so
air?
The concept of endocrine disruptors, it's basically any chemical or toxin that can either crush hormone production or crush hormone function. And in this case, we're talking about our water supply, laden with synthetic estrogen. Women's birth control cannot be filtered adequately. And so we are actually, I like to jokingly say facetiously that all men are on the pill because there are massive levels of synthetic estrogen in our drinking water. In our food supply, our crops are sprayed with chemicals like atrazine and glyphosate, which directly cause hormone disruption. We can look at our
so these toxins are like suppressing our hormones, generally speaking, and so testosterone is being suppressed by
hormone production.
So I'm very interested. Could you speak on like scientifically how that happens from like when we ingest, the body absorbs these chemicals and then shut down
Sure. So
the propensity to generate testosterone?
Yeah, so it's a concept called epigenetics, and what that means is it's the science of how our lifestyle, our environment directly affect genetic expression. And so there's a process called methylation, which is how certain activities, behaviors, or environmental exposures can affect our DNA, which directly affects DNA transcription, which affects production of proteins such as testosterone, among others. Endocrine disruption, we're talking about in our water supply, our food supply, our personal care products, shampoo, laundry detergent, sunscreen, deodorant, that kind of stuff, is not just crushing testosterone, it's also causing things like infertility, autoimmune disease, obesity, ADD, even cancers. And so it's a big deal that I love that there's this new push toward awareness and understanding of all the chemicals, especially here in the U.S., that are causing dramatic effect on our health. And when we look at this testosterone epidemic, I call it, one of the best ways we can address that is by first just recognizing all the crap that's affecting hormone production.
Did you see, are you familiar with the Food Babe or Vani Hari?
Yeah.
It's her real name.
Yeah.
So Vani Hari and I shared a stage back in maybe, 10 years ago when we were both getting started. Food Babe was a bigger brand than Burn at the time. And so I was, enamored when I was like, oh, hey, Vani, I follow you. And, she has beef with Kellogg's, which I think is rightfully so. We all should. And I'm from Battle Creek, Michigan, right? Where that's the home of Kellogg's. It's Cereal City, USA, Kellogg's, Post, General Mill. And, you see that industry targeted as rightfully so. We were discussing on our podcast a couple weeks ago, that's the artificial food coloring is one kind of, however you would want to say it scientifically, derivation, one, molecule away from, the stuff that dyes Fruit Loops purple, that dyes my shirt purple. And it's, what you're saying practically is playing out. And now you see like RFK really running on, a lot of, Make America Healthy Again, which I think is, I don't know how anybody couldn't get behind that, knowing how sick we are. And then you have this healthcare system that, is propping up the kind of the big food. And you're kind of right in the middle studying all the effects on human biology of that. And so tell us, a lot of Burn Bootcamp members right now are following that Vani Hari, Kellogg's petition, get the dyes out of our food. What do those chemicals like do for our children, young men, and as we grow up? There's a difference between, when you're 35 introducing something to your body that's foreign versus from birth. Could you speak on that?
Sure. What's scary is this transgenerational effect that we're seeing. And what I mean by that is there are studies that show that epigenetics, again, modification of our DNA by exposures, by our lifestyle, but both good and bad. But we're talking here about toxins, chemicals like the food coloring and the dyes and all the artificial crap in our food supply. Studies show that epigenetic effect gets carried down from one generation to the next. So what that means is our grandparents were exposed to these chemicals back when they first started coming out in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Then our parents got exposed to them, and now we are passing these on ourselves to our kids as well. And so it's getting passed down through simply germ cell alteration. And what that basically means is our sperm has DNA, obviously, our DNA that's getting passed along to the next generation. And that DNA has modifications on it from our exposures, from toxins, et cetera, that we're passing along to our kids, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And this is why I really believe, and I've made this statement for about 5 or 6 years now, that I really believe we're going to come to a point. I said 20 years, which was 5 years ago, so we're 15 years away, that the entire male population is going to be impotent and infertile unless we do something about this, because it's getting worse and worse every year, and it's getting worse through generations as well.
And so what you're saying then is the epigenetic transfer of DNA from one generation to the next, or at least the influence of the epigenetic transfer, is actually downregulating our DNA and downregulating our ability to reproduce, and that is generationally getting passed on. It's getting worse and worse and worse, and it's almost, so the infertility argument would be like it's a race to zero, if we keep doing this. And is that practically speaking, that's a great kind of a good way to think about it?
Exactly. In simplistic terms, it is affecting the way our body functions normally is getting altered as we go through generations. Exactly. And that's hormone production, that's sperm production, that's other hormones as well, that's metabolism, that's mitochondrial function, all these aspects of our health. You see the rise in chronic disease. We see the rise in obesity even in children. And I believe in big part it's because it's getting passed down from generations, all these exposures that we're having, and we got to stop it now before it becomes a real big problem.
So do you see in your work, when you study, let's say testosterone, for example, let's go back to testosterone, in males and in females, do you see the use of TRT, which has become popular, or correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but the GLP-1 semaglutide, I think it's called? Mm-hmm. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
You see the rise of these types of drugs.
Yeah.
And it's largely unregulated. I tried a little bit of the semaglutide, and I'll tell you what, I didn't feel good on it. I know a lot of people do feel good on it, so I'm not demonizing. I'm just giving my own experience. Was I tried it, and I just intuitively was like, oh shit, not only do I feel not great, but if I start this now and I do start feeling great, now I have to be on this my whole life. And so I see, kind of pros and cons. So, we'll go there in a minute, but the rise of these TRTs and these GLP-1s, do you see that as a medical response to the health crisis, or is that capitalization on humans?
A lot to unpack there, and I want to break
I know.
To be fair, I want to break those apart.
Okay,
those
break them apart.
Completely different issue. Yeah, so let's talk about testosterone first, and then let's get into the GLP-1 second, because I see those as very, very different approaches. So when it comes to testosterone, we are seeing this, as I mentioned, this massive decline in testosterone levels, even in men as young as their 20s and 30s. Okay. What we know is that there are natural ways that you can boost, and I put air quotes around that, testosterone. Okay, you can boost testosterone levels by avoiding exposures, reducing exposures to the toxins we're talking about. We can improve our sleep quality. We can improve our strength training, especially the big core, the quads and the hams and the core and the back. These big belly muscles. With strength training can improve testosterone levels. We know that improving the quality of our diet and focus on good healthy fats as opposed to the pro-inflammatory fats. We know that reducing sugar intake and really fortifying our nutrition can help with testosterone levels. We know that mitigating stress can help. We know that optimizing micronutrient levels, specifically things like zinc and magnesium and B-complex vitamins and maybe boron and some other key elements may be helpful for boosting testosterone. So a lot of ways that we can...
Any natural supplements you can throw in there for us?
Yeah, herbal, some things like that can cause a slight bump. What I know from 25 years in urology, working in men's health every single day, is that, first of all, no one's going to do all that stuff. You can preach all that stuff till you're blue in the face, but no one's going to do all that stuff religiously compliant. Compliance becomes a real issue here. But let's say you did all that stuff religiously, consistently for 6 months, let's just say. Mm-hmm. What I find is the improvement in testosterone in those situations is noticeable, but is it enough to get it to where you need to be? And my answer is very strongly no. And that's because our levels are so low now. So let me give you some numbers to help put some perspective around this. free testosterone is the number we care about. Free testosterone is the lab test that measures the available amount of testosterone, not total testosterone, but the bioavailable active form of T. Our target for that is around 20. Okay, 20 is our target. Most men I see who come in, they're in the 4 to 6 range. I have NFL wide receivers who play every Sunday in the NFL right now, active players. I can't give testosterone because of NFL stuff, but their levels are 6. And these guys are elite athletes. And so this is what I'm talking about when I mentioned the testosterone epidemic, that it's getting worse through generations. And so we're seeing guys with free Ts of 4. And so if we do all the natural stuff we're talking about for 6 months religiously, which no one's going to do anyway, you may get that 4 up to 8, which is 100% improvement from 4 to 8, right? But again, we're trying to get you to 20, which is where you're supposed to be, and you're still nowhere close. And so what happens then is we need some way, Devin, to get men's testosterone levels where they need to be. Now, if you're in your 20s and 30s and we're still, interested in fertility, then testosterone is not an option. There are other ways of boosting testosterone medically besides giving testosterone. But once fertility is no longer an issue, what I know is that with TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, I can get your free T from 4 to 20 where it needs to be, like that. What it's going to do is it's going to improve your cognitive function. You're going to have better memory and focus and concentration and mental acuity. You're going to have a better mood. You're going to just feel better. You're going to have better drive. Not for sex necessarily, but for life. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have more focus. You're going to have the ability to burn visceral fat, the key fat that contributes to cardiovascular disease. You're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to be able to train better, work out better. You're going to have better bone density. You're going to have all these better metrics, and it's going to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease. And we know that men with low T have an increased risk of prostate cancer, which is counterintuitive to what we thought for many years. So you see where I'm going here, Devin, that by giving TRT to these men who have dramatically diminished levels, we are changing lives. We're improving not just quality of life and performance in day-to-day activities, but we're actually reducing mortality. And so I look at it as really transforming men's health by getting their levels to where they need to be. And what's interesting, Devin, I see this time and time and time again, is when I get them on TRT, now they're more driven to do the hard work, like let's go train like we're supposed to in the gym. Let's eat what I'm supposed to. Let's actually focus on proper sleep and stress mitigation and all these lifestyle factors that are so important. TRT can't replace those. I think they go together. But sometimes, many times what I find is that men are so diminished and weak and lost and in this brain fog and this low energy, this diminished state, that TRT helps get the momentum going in the right direction to make real changes in their lives. And I see it time and time again where men say, holy shit, doc, I feel so much better. I didn't even know how bad I felt until now I feel how I'm supposed to. And so the question always comes up, do you have to take it forever? Once I start TRT, my free T was 4, and now I'm on TRT, my testosterone, my free T is 20. Do I have to be on it forever? That question changes. When men get on testosterone and they feel all these amazing benefits and they're able to actually live life again, the question becomes, doc, are you going to take this away from me? Do I have to stop this? And in fact, the reality is once you're on it, you don't want to stop it because you feel how you're supposed to feel. And that's really the key difference. So TRT, the literature strongly, staunchly supports the massive cardiovascular benefits. It strongly supports the quality of life benefits. It strongly supports the functional benefits of optimizing testosterone. There's no question about it. And I think any man who has low testosterone, the natural stuff, the strength training, the sleep, the nutrition, the stress mitigation, the clearing the toxins, that's all massively important still. And we're going to get that T to where it needs to be and really change lives.
Yeah, well, I hear all these benefits, and I've seen and witnessed people that have been usually over 45 or 50, that from my experience that have engaged in TRT, and they have nothing but great things to say about it. I'm one of those people that, like, if I can do a short term like recorrection, then I'm all in. But I hesitate to sign up for something forever. Yeah. That's a big mountain for me to climb. And so, how would you, if you're coaching me, okay, you said, like, I'm like super neutral. You'll get the TRT, like, go TRT, and then you'll get the, hey, that's testosterone, that's steroids, I'm going to stay away from that. Okay, I'm in the middle. I can see how nothing is absolute. There's, for somebody like me, I would say, listen, if I came to see you and I'm a 3 or I'm a 4 and I'm feeling like crap, help me get on a 2-year plan to, like, get myself, because you said 6 months you could start to feel better. 6 months, if you did the right things, you might be able to improve from a 4 to an 8. So if I was somebody that wanted to just supplement with something like this, right, and not sign up forever, if I went from, let's just say I said, yes, let's work on getting me up to a 20 and then weaning me off so I can stay at an 18 to 20, is that even a possibility? Or is that not a possibility?
So what I find, and this is again 25 years doing this now, what I find is that when we put a man on testosterone replacement therapy and they choose to stop it, which is incredibly rare. No one, I shouldn't say no one, there's never no one, but very rarely do men actually stop it. When they do stop it, their levels go back down to where they were before we started. It may be maybe slightly higher if they've done the hard work like we're talking about. But then they will gradually decline again as well. And this goes back to, again, the transgenerational effect, the epigenetic effect of the toxin exposure we've been dealing with for, I'll call it 3 generations now. A lot of that is just incredibly difficult to undo. Can you do it? Sure. And I have some men who decide they don't want to do TRT, and that's great. There are, again, natural things that we can do to help improve it, but I find it incredibly difficult to get where you really need to be long term.
When you wrote Codes of Longevity,
I want to be clear too. There's no downside. Sorry.
No worries. There'd be a downside to excess, right? And you see that, but in terms of seeing you medically, you're going to really regulate the amount of testosterone needed and monitor the levels and not give an oversupply of the body. A lot of guys that I know back in my baseball days, they weren't doing it. They were doing illegal stuff. But they'd get gyno real bad, and you'd see acne and things like that. But what you're saying is this is the more, obviously you're monitoring this in a real biometric, a biometric approach to it, and you're just looking at all the data to say, okay, here's what this week looks like versus the next.
I'll put it this way. When I work with men, we're talking about optimizing. Okay, we're talking about optimizing testosterone as one of 50 hormones we work on. But testosterone specifically, we're trying to get it to where it's supposed to be, which again, I would target free testosterone of around 20. And some men, 15 may be okay. Some men, they may need 25. There's nuance there. But some of these bro science bodybuilders who are doing it on their own in the black market without supervision guidance, they're getting free testosterones of 200.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Totally different scale, totally different level, a lot more side effects, issues like you're talking about, where it's not being done under medical supervision, not being done the right way. So sure, you're going to have side effects and problems and complications when you're overdosing like that. What I like to say is I tell my patients, I'm not trying to make you Superman, I'm just trying to make you a man again. Mm-hmm. And there's a real difference between that when it comes down to the nuance of how you give testosterone.
So now let's talk about the GLP-1s for a moment, because those are the hottest thing in the world right now. And I'm always a very neutral person. I'm not going to demonize anything, but I'm also not going to just openly buy into it because I see it working for somebody, right? Or I've in the fitness industry, there's not one regimen that is exactly right for everyone. And that's where the personal training side of our business really comes in, is when we're sitting down with somebody and we're like, what's your lifestyle? What hours do you work? How many kids do you have? How crazy are those kids, right? Like, how can we adjust the things in your life based on what you care about the most, so that you can have all the energy you need, right, to serve as best as you can. And, we've got members now that are inquiring, we've always prided ourselves in educating members on their nutrition and their strength training, their hypertrophy, protein synthesis, the amount of protein to get in, the right amount of carbohydrates, good clean food, healthy, supplementation. Okay. And that's the foundation to all the stuff we're working on. I think we can both agree on that. Like doing TRT without working out, eating right. If you're doing TRT and drinking 5 nights a week and drinking a 12-pack, it's probably not going to be, you might feel a little bit better, but it's probably just going to, I would assume, be a disaster in the long run. I mean, you can comment on that, but the Ozempic market is something that we talk much more about because 90% of our clientele are women.
Sure.
And so maybe touch a little bit on testosterone for women, and then transition into what your thoughts are on these GLP-1s.
Yeah, sure.
Where do they fit in society? And where do they go? Where can you go wrong when you're supplementing, whether it's TRT or you're supplementing with Ozempic or GLP-1? Where can you go wrong? Because I believe there's downsides to everything, right? You can't have. There's nothing that's absolutely good. It's just a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off. There's downsides to everything in life. So tell me some of these downsides from your perspective of Ozempic and the upsides.
Okay, so let me go back and make sure I don't miss anything that you mentioned there. And fun topic here. So first of all, I want to finish up testosterone by mentioning the women, since I know most of your audience are women. Testosterone is a critically important, valuable hormone for women just as it is for men. And for women, it's really important when it comes to things like metabolism and energy, mitochondrial function, ability to burn fat and build muscle and have better gains in the gym. Sex drive is a big one that I see in premenopausal women as their testosterone levels decline. Mood and energy are all wrapped into that as well. And so I would really urge all the women out there to get your free testosterone levels checked as well, and talk to your doc, your longevity doc, your functional medicine doc about testosterone for you as well. So important for women, and it does help with cardiovascular risk as well. And interestingly, testosterone in men and women gets metabolized broken down into estrogen. Okay, that's how the biochemical steroid pathway of metabolism. Testosterone gets broken down by the aromatase enzyme into estrogen. That's probably why we see cardiovascular benefit of testosterone replacement therapy in men and women. In women, this drives home the point that postmenopausal, why they need estrogen is because of and why women have, cardiovascular disease tends to happen later in women than men. It's because we believe that estrogen is so important for them. So I'll wrap up testosterone by saying women need it just as much as men. GLP-1s, I want to echo what you just said, and I want to 1,000% agree that the most important part of everything we do when it comes to health is nutrition, sleep, fitness, stress, and toxins. Okay? All those, call it lifestyle, call it behaviors, call it daily practices. All of that is paramount to anything else. Nothing else matters until you have those foundational pieces down. And I would add into there things like gut health and things like blood sugar regulation and other key immune function stuff, but that's becoming a little more medical. But for the listener, those lifestyle practices are paramount. And I make the analogy of a cake. You're baking this amazing cake, and it's like a wedding cake with tiers and layers of your cake. And I really believe the bottom foundational level of that cake is nutrition. And it's hormones, and it's sleep, and it's fitness, and it's stress and mindset, and it's toxins, and it's micronutrient levels, and it's immune function, and it's gut health, and it's blood sugar regulation. All these different layers of this cake that we can build upon that strong foundation. Peptides, I love peptides, but peptides like GLP-1s are the icing on that cake. And the analogy I give is you don't get your icing until you bake your cake. That's like going to the grocery store and getting a tub of frosting and just eating that frosting. It doesn't make any freaking sense. That first bite may taste maybe good, but then it's disgusting. It's too sweet. The context is wrong. That's what people are doing when it comes to GLP-1s. They're trying to just buy a can of frosting and think that's basically like a cake, when it's not. It's not even the same thing. Not even the same ballpark. And so I believe that those foundational pieces are paramount. Then I'll diverge from other thoughts here, that I think GLP-1s do have a role when put together with hormone replacement therapy, hormone optimization, fixing micronutrients, cleaning up the gut. The microbiome controls our whole body, controls metabolism and energy and our immune system and neurotransmitters, and everything is controlled in some sense by the gut. So cleaning up the gut's important. Looking at blood sugar regulation and understand if you're eating the right foods for your body. That, for some people, I had a client, bananas and coffee were causing massive inflammation. Those aren't necessarily bad foods. For him, they were. So it's doing the testing to figure out what's right for you. But then what I find, and I see this all the time, Devin, is I find men and women are struggling. They're struggling with getting momentum to burn fat, struggling to build muscle, struggling to have energy just to make it through the day, and they're just struggling to get started. And we throw all this lifestyle stuff at them, and by stuff I don't mean that in any way disparaging, but it's a lot. It's eat the right foods, get the right grocery shopping. Protein intake is so important, and the order of the foods that you eat is important, and hydration and micronutrients and hormones and sleep, and it's a lot, right? It's so much stuff that we give them, and what I find is people get overwhelmed. People get overwhelmed, or they get frustrated because they'll do one or two of those things and it doesn't work, and they quit and they go back to doing the shit that got them there in the first place. And what I find is people need momentum. They need momentum to get going in the right direction, and once they get going, take the training wheels off, and now they're going. And so that's the context with our clients at Gapin Institute when we work with people. That's how we use GLP-1s. We use them in the beginning as a trigger to generate some momentum, get them going, but only if they're doing all the other stuff and baking all those other layers of their cake as well. Because otherwise, like you said, they're not going to work. I've had so many women especially come to us where they've been on GLP-1s, they bought them online in one of these companies, and they lost 30 pounds, and then 6 months later they gain it all back again. That's the normal. That's basically what I would expect if you don't put all the other pieces in place. And so I take a very holistic, integrated, comprehensive approach that you need everything put together to really see those benefits.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that's, something that I think it's largely getting lost. I'm all for ways to, and especially as science and technology evolves, I'm all for ways, to make us healthier and make us happier. But very cognizant of putting Band-Aids over bullet holes. And if we're not changing the behavior, from the inside out, if we're constantly looking for something outside of us to change who we are from the outside in, well, it's just a hollow strategy, and it's like putting Band-Aids over bullet holes. So it's going to bleed through eventually. And it's refreshing to hear that you package up fitness, nutrition, recovery, and sleep with those who, might need hormone replacement therapy or any GLP-1s. And, too, that's the average person just sees the commercials and sees the people, kind of dancing, on the ballroom floor, after taking, a shot in the belly or two, and it doesn't work like that. And I think it's the same. It's always been this, though, right? This is just the newest version of it. It's always been this. Gastric bypass surgery is another great example. I know people, the thousands of members I've trained personally, plus the tens of thousands I've met traveling around Burn Bootcamp Nation. There's people that work for me directly who that surgery before anything else was available changed their life. Right? Because they had all these underlying foundational behaviors. And so I think it's wrong of the fitness industry to, which happens a lot, the fitness industry to demonize any strategy. And I think it's also not wise of the medical industry to look at the fitness industry as not part of the medical industry, because you and I both believe that if nutrition and fitness and sleep and recovery is the foundation that you then layer on technology and science, then how is it not? And if this healthcare system is broken, well, how is it broken? Well, it's because 90% of people aren't doing these foundational things. And so the front lines of the healthcare system in our country needs to start to include these private companies that are out there actually working with hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis times the 10 major companies, and now you're working with millions and millions of people on a daily basis actively to integrate these things over time. And I think you see some of that happening now, and so it's nice to speak to you because I think it's important. And I'm not sure about you. You can, I guess, tell me it from your circle of influence and the people in your space, or your colleagues that might not be in your inner circle, but you're at conferences and with and things like that. When you're in the fitness industry, it's it's pretty much like eat. All you ever need to do is work out hard, eat eat well, and sleep, and that's it. And there's nothing else. Anything outside of that is. They're trying to sell you. That's what people will say. Yeah. But I don't believe that because I don't think any one strategy fits any mass amount of us, any mass amount of people. So What do you think?
So I think it comes back to what are you trying to accomplish, and what are your goals? And for a lot of people, it's weight loss. It's have better energy, have better cognitive function, focus, and make it through the day, and be able to have energy at the end of the day to spend time with your family after work, or perform in sports, or perform in the boardroom, or perform as a founder, entrepreneur, executive. I think it comes down to understanding that there's not one thing that's going to get you there. So, like you said, nutrition and fitness and sleep you think of as kind of foundations. But I have a lot of clients who come in and they tried all that stuff and it's not working because their hormones are off. And you can't eat your testosterone up. There's nothing you can eat that's going to get your testosterone level where it needs to be if it's 4. If you have low thyroid, if you have low DHEA, if you have low nitric oxide production, if you have low vitamin D, if you have low progesterone for women, if you have all these hormones that we need, if they're diminished, you're not going to get there. The GLP-1s, to clarify, your body makes GLP-1. It's actually a normal peptide that our bodies produce. It's called glucagon-like peptide 1. And GLP-1 is produced by a cell in your gut, the L cell. It's a cell that produces this peptide that goes to your stomach and tells you you're full. It goes to the pancreas to produce more insulin to help better regulate blood sugar. It goes to your brain and tells you that you're full so you quit eating. And it also throughout the body helps better regulate blood sugar. So a lot of mechanisms of action from this one peptide that your gut makes. Now, for your gut to make that GLP-1 peptide, it needs normal, healthy bacteria, microbiome in the gut, specifically Akkermansia, one particular bug which we know feeds or is necessary for the L cell to produce this peptide. So if your gut's messed up, if you've damaged the gut from stress or poor diet or from toxins, you name it, infections, whatever, now you're going to gain weight when you think you're doing everything right, but you're simply missing keystone critical bacteria in the gut. So you see how all these pieces come together, and I like to praise everybody that yes, the fitness programming is important, yes, the proper diet and protein intake is important, and yes, sleep is important, and hormones. I think they all come together in the confluence. The real results are when you can bring them all together, layer in some peptides as needed, as icing on the cake, as the way to augment everything else, get some momentum going, and now it's the daily change. What can I do every day to become just a little bit incrementally better? And honestly, that's where I see it all fits together. And there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there trying to sell you the magic drug, the magic supplement, the magic peptide, the magic digital program, and it's all bullshit. It's putting it all together, the foundational pieces. That's where we see real transformational results.
So people get these compounds, like you were saying, just online nowadays. And there's I believe there's a research grade level and a pharmaceutical grade level of the drugs, and you can get them pretty much anywhere. What are the dangers and the differences between the two?
Yeah, great question. So I always recommend anyone who's getting any peptides, and we use a lot of peptides in our practice, that they need to come from a reputable compounding pharmacy. And what that means is you can't buy them yourself with a credit card. If you can go online to any site, a website, and swipe your credit card to buy a peptide, I would run, because quality assurance is questionable. You don't know what you're getting. I've seen studies where these peptides are full of heavy metals, they're full of toxins, they're full of other fillers. They don't even have the peptide that they're claiming are in them. And there's just not the same level of oversight and quality assurance in terms of purity of what you're getting. And especially since a lot of these are injectable, I would never suggest anyone inject a compound that they don't know where it came from, what it is, what's the purity of it. And I don't care if they're showing you a certificate, there's no way to know that that certificate goes to the bottle that they're giving you. And that's the problem that I have with any of these direct-to-consumer peptide companies. And so I would only work with a specialist, a functional doc, a longevity doc, who knows what they're doing when it comes to peptides.
And so at the Gapin Institute, where are you guys located, by the way?
We're in Sarasota, Florida.
Sarasota, Florida. And you ship out all over the world, I'm assuming, direct-to-consumer?
We do telemedicine. We work with people everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's play a game, Doc Tracy, me and you. All right. I'm your patient. I'm a 37-year-old male. I've got a 14% body fat right now. I'm not in peak shape, but I'm 4 weeks out from it. At any given time, staying close enough to be dangerous, but far enough away to eat a donut every now and then. I've got 3 kids. I work 85 to 100 hours a week every week. I love doing it. I'm not never stressed, but I'm very rarely stressed because my life is very normalized at this point. My outcomes would be that I want to be able to run longer. I want my engine to go to start up quicker, and to run a little bit longer. I would say that I'd really like to I would really like to lose about 4 to 5% body fat and stay there. And I've just it's been pretty stubborn, now that I'm 37. I don't know what my hormones are doing. I haven't got a hormone panel. I've recently, about a year ago, I did get one, and my testosterone levels were normal, but I don't feel like I'm 25 anymore. I don't. I was
I love that.
I was a professional baseball player, and during those from the time that I played Central Michigan University all the way through the time I got released from the San Francisco Giants, I felt I was optimal, like peak 20s optimal, like you're strongest you've ever been. Your body doesn't hurt. You can move how you want to. Your brain is aligned with like the movements that you want to make. Like there's no lag time between just taking that step and thinking about it. Right. So yeah, reaction time, performance in the gym, that would be normal. Like my professional baseball days. I work out more now than I did then.
Yeah.
That's a good piece of information. And my diet's way cleaner now than it was then.
Yeah, sure.
Back then it was Gatorades and pizza and Chick-fil-A and whatever, whatever I could get my hands on as a broke baseball player. So I would be interested in your advice for somebody like me, who hasn't hit that magical age of 40 yet, but
Sure. So we see this all the time, what you just described, and I'm going to use one of my clients. Name is Sean, because I'm seeing as I'm hearing you talk, I see Sean. Sean is he's 38 now. Started working with us when he was 35, and he looks ripped. He's in great shape. He would do it, pretty heavy training at least once a day. Sometimes he's doing like twice a day training with his wife as well. In the gym every freaking day, coming to work every day with chicken and rice and super clean diet, and has air quotes no stress in his life, and sleeps well, and has 4 kids. So very busy with the kids, coaching their Little League baseball team, and on the go all the time. Family man, Christian, and great guy, and thinks he's doing everything right. Testosterone was in the tank. Thought he was doing fine, and I'll make this story a little clearer. He's actually my PA, so I want to put the context right. This is my PA who is doing a lot of the medical work for me. When he first came to me, he thought he was doing great, and Sean's testosterone was in the tank. Looks great, felt great. Testosterone was in the tank. And his previous practice, the primary care doctor told him his level was, quote, normal, and what he thought was, quote, normal as well. And this is the real problem with our traditional medical healthcare system is we use this crappy phrase normal. And what does normal mean? So what normal means, and I was in, again, 25 years in urology, in traditional medicine. We are taught way back in medical school, in the Paleozoic era when I went through medical school, they taught us to look in that lab slip, and on the right side of the page, you'll see a reference range. And if the number's in that reference range, it's, quote, normal. And I'll call bullshit, and this is why. That reference range is, in fact, actually what I've learned is nothing more than the average. Okay, so LabCorp does 1 billion testosterone levels this year, and they look at what's the average, and they look statistically like a bell curve, like anything else in life, statistically bell curve, 2 standard deviations above and below that average, and that's your reference range. That's it. That's all they do, is they look at the average. Now, for most labs like sodium and potassium, that doesn't change. For hundreds and millions of years, that's not going to change. Testosterone levels, though, again, we know from studies, 3 massive studies have proven that free testosterone is half of what it was 20 years ago. That's undeniable. It's half. So what that means is that reference range keeps getting lower and lower and lower every year, and we're being told we're, quote, normal. Well, we're not normal. We are in the shitty average range, which is not where you want to be. And so I'll see this time and time again where my NFL players, for example, their free T of 4 is in the, quote, normal range when they should be at 20. It's insane because that reference range may be 3.9 to 12.1, something like that, because it's half of what it should be. And so I would challenge the normal phrase. I would say that most guys think they're doing okay. You look at your gut and you find that you're not. You look at your sleep quality, you find that you're not. You look at all the other 50 hormones and you realize you're not. Sean, who looked like the epitome of good health, he went for a calcium score, which is a CT scan to look at the heart, which we do with all of our clients for cardiovascular risk assessment. That's looking at the actual plaque, the hard plaque in your coronary vessels, which should be 0. Right, especially if you're young, like in your 30s, right? You should have a calcium score of 0. His calcium score, this uber healthy, incredibly fit, muscular, great, healthy dude, was 212. And it was really a holy crap moment for Sean when he had to wake up and realize that everything he thought he was doing well needed adjustment. And so I see this every day. It's about optimization. It's not about treating disease. You know, I'm sure you don't have diabetes. I'm sure you don't have high blood pressure or cardiovascular disease yet. I'm sure you don't have any major, health issue. But there's a lot we could do to optimize to make you better. And like you said, 14%, most guys would kill for a 14% body fat, but you want to be better. And that's what we see every day. And it's making the incremental changes that you can only find through complex testing. And so what I would suggest for any guy, especially like you, is I would do the advanced testing to find out what's working and what's not.
And we can do that by contacting you at the Gapin Institute, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And guys and gals, we have. If you'd like to talk to Dr. Tracy, contact his team. We'll put all of his contact information, the webpage, right in the show notes here, so everybody has access to you. I have 2 more questions. Number 1 is, as we move forward, and a lot of people are scared of the needles. Is there any application moving forward that seems more kind of like breakthrough application that is more accessible to people?
Yeah, you're talking specifically testosterone or peptides in general, or?
Well, I think yeah, just at home administration in general. Yeah.
Sure. So there are a number of different ways of giving testosterone other than injections. And injections, I personally do testosterone replacement therapy myself, and I use a sub-Q needle. So it's a tiny little 28 gauge needle. You go just under the skin in the belly. I don't even feel it. But for people who are afraid of doing injections at all, there are topical options, and now there are some oral options for testosterone as well. So there definitely are other options beyond injections for testosterone. Now for peptides, it depends on the particular peptide. There are some peptides that come as a nasal spray, as a topical, stuff like that, but it depends on which peptide specifically we're talking about.
How much, and then my last question would be around nutrition, and if somebody is partaking in this supplementation, this therapy, when you do monitor nutrition, are you recommending a kind of algorithm for your macronutrients and micronutrients? If you could dive into that a little bit, what type of algorithm do you look, or macronutrient ratio do you look for?
Yeah, I know this is your expertise, and so I don't want to step on your toes here at all. What I'll simply say is what we do is we do metabolic rate testing first. So we do use a device where we can actually measure your metabolic rate to understand exactly, based on breath testing, exactly how much energy you're using on a daily basis, either with or without exercise. We use genetics to understand, based on your genetic blueprint, how much protein, carbs, and fats are ideal for you, because there's definitely nuance around that. And then we put that together with your goals. Are you trying to gain weight, maintain weight, or lose weight? And with that, I can understand your daily caloric intake, your metabolic rate in terms of what's your basal expenditure versus if you're training, and what your daily requirements are from a caloric standpoint. I can then understand, based on genetics, what your macronutrient ratio, and then from there we can obviously calculate what those numbers are exactly. Yeah, most guys, as you know, and I know you've talked about this as well, most guys in general don't eat nearly enough protein. And protein, when you optimize your protein intake, it's amazing how a lot of the other pieces just kind of fall into place almost naturally just by focusing on that one macronutrient.
If you could give me like a per body pound or per visceral muscle mass, per lean muscle mass protein ratio. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, so typically 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. And so, if your ideal body weight, for me, it's 160. My goal every day is 160 grams of protein, knowing that some days I may only get to 120, which is, 0.8-ish, but my goal every day is 160. And, I got my Greek yogurts here, that, my no sugar Greek yogurt. I've done my whey protein shake this morning already. That you can do cottage cheese, you could do lean chicken breast, you could do fish, you could do salmon. There are a lot of ways, if you're just intentional about it, that you can get to that 160, for example. It just needs to be a priority for you.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we have about 3 minutes left here in our time together. Would you like to say anything to the Burn Bootcamp audience? Any message of advice? Any philosophy that might resonate with those that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, first of all, I have a bunch of freebies for the listeners. If you go to gapininstitute.com/launch, a bunch of free downloads, my TED Talk, a book, a peptide guide, a high-performance health handbook, a bunch of freebies there, as well as if you're interested in learning more about Gapin Institute, you can jump on a quick call with my team. So that's a freebie for the listener. I have at the end of my TED Talk, I tell a story of my son who, he's a golfer at age, he's 11 now. At age 6, he was competing already, and he was at the tournament, par 5. Second shot, I told Graham, lay up because there's water in front of the green, hit your second shot, and then you'll approach, your approach can go, third shot on the green. And at 6 years old, he says, "Dad, I didn't come here to lay up." And he pulls out his wood. He's 6 years old, pulls out his wood and crushes it over the water, somehow makes it on the green, which I didn't think he would. And then he 2-putts for birdie, and he ends up winning that tournament by 1 stroke. So it was amazing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so my take-home message from that, really, I love that moment as really a metaphor for life. And the thought here is, you didn't come here to lay up. And a lot of guys play it safe. They play it small. They're not intentional. They're not proactive with their life. And I would really just encourage every man out there to step forward, step up, and take charge, and quit waiting for something to happen. And, you didn't come here to lay up.
Doc Tracy, man, thank you for your time. You're a joy to talk to. We'll do it again.
You got it, bro.